Welcome to the Movies of the Dam podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter at Damned Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing John R. Leonetti's 2019 film, The Silence. The movie opens as a group of cave researchers unearth the Vesps, a series of blind, flying dinosaur-like creatures that hunt by sound. The Vesps begin decimating the human population as their numbers quickly expand. The Andrews family is soon forced to flee their home for the safety of the quiet countryside. They eventually find refuge in a small house, but while seeking antibiotics for her mother's injuries, Allie and her father Hugh run into the tongueless reverend of a cult. Angered by their refusal to join them, the reverend and his followers soon show up at their countryside house. The group attacks in the middle of the night, and the Andrews family is able to fight them off, but not before losing Grandma Lynn. The remaining Andrews family members soon head north and eventually find safety at the refuge, as the Vesps dislike the cold. Just to let everyone know, this movie was suggested to us by Mark Walker. He reached out to us through his Twitter handle at @MarkWalker_UK. He thought the movie was half decent, with the bad reviews being due to the similarities to The Quiet Place. So, we thought we'd give it a try. John, opening thoughts on the movie?
So when it first came up there on the screen, I saw Stanley Tucci there. I was like, cool. I like this guy. I enjoy him.
Solid actor. I was really happy to see that he was in this film as well, and he got a ton of screen time.
Yeah, for sure, and he should because he's good. But that being said, I didn't like this movie. I didn't like this movie at all. There were a lot of issues with it, with tempo, with a lot of things going on that should be. This should be addressed where you have a more cohesive narrative that's interesting and engaging. I wanted to turn this movie off a couple times. I was that bored. I was bored. So, I don't know. Like, for me, it didn't do much for me.
I don't know if I'm as harsh as you are with the movie, and to be honest, I did turn it off at one point. It wasn't due necessarily to boredom. It was just that there was nothing that held me there for too long, like to be like, no, I got to finish this right now. I'm like, I'll come back to this later type of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I was bored. I agree with what you said about the tempo. There was obviously some cool stuff and some cool scenes, but it did seem a little slow at points.
It did, and it doesn't matter when a movie is slow to a certain degree if it's the purpose of the slowness is to progress the plot forward. But even when it's slow, it should still be interesting. So I guess it wouldn't be slow if it was interesting. But anyways, I thought it was too slow, and I wanted to turn it off like more than once.
And now this is an impossible question to answer. But as far as the interesting things goes, would this have been more interesting to you if The Quiet Place didn't exist? Like if you had never heard of The Quiet Place, where it's kind of these creatures that hunt by sound, would it have piqued your interest more, being like, oh, this is kind of a pretty cool original concept?
Okay, that's a good question. It's not really an impossible question because I think you and I talked about A Quiet Place before, and I had issues with that film too.
And you know what? We're likely going to do an episode on that one eventually. But yeah, we've both seen it and talked about it before.
Yeah, and the characters were very engaging. The slow parts weren't slow. It was interesting. There's a lot of stuff presented. I liked The Quiet Place. I really liked The Quiet Place. There were some issues with it though that logically annoyed the hell out of me. But overall, it was a great film. A really good film, and there were a lot of similarities with The Silence to A Quiet Place for sure. But my whole thing is like, I try to judge a project on its own, like standalone on its own, right? So sometimes there's difficulties with that, right? So if a movie's based on a book, it's hard not to compare the two. It's very difficult to go into it with an open mind, like, okay, well, I'm not going to use what I know from the book and apply to the movie, right? Like, it's almost impossible to do that for me anyways, but I try. I try to say, okay, what was the attempt here, and were they successful at it? That's what I try to do. So for this one, when you open up with prehistoric creatures that no one has seen, I'm like, I call bullshit on that every time.
I had an issue with that opening scene. It was kind of like almost like a found footage type camera thing.
Yeah.
And I found it very difficult to kind of really realize what was going on. Now, they kind of talked about it afterwards, kind of explaining what happened. But during that first scene, I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah. I didn't care, right? So that's the thing, right? It's like, I don't mind to a certain extent, like prehistoric creatures, and they're resurface or they're revisited. Like, I don't mind. There's been plenty of films where that happens before. I don't mind it as long as the film itself is well presented. Then I can suspend my disbelief of that factor, right?
But
So-
you just find that it was impossible that these creatures were trapped in this cave forever. Like, how did they survive type of thing? Like, that bugged you?
Well, that bugged me because they also had like a news thing on it, right? Where it's like, okay, well, these creatures were sealed off for over hundreds of millions of years. So pre-man, right? They're sealed off, and in this giant cave system. What were they eating?
Yeah, how were they surviving?
Right? And, how did they know it was 100 million years? Like, did they go in there afterwards and look at, okay, the air in this cave or, the soil sample sort of, did they do that? I don't think they did because there's these creatures in there. So how do they know that stuff?
Yeah, because like, if there was any connection for them to get fresh air or oxygen, like, you would think they'd be a way for them to burrow out of there, right?
Exactly, right? So, and that's what I mean. Like, they just threw these numbers out there. They didn't show how they came to this realization. If you're not going to be able to tell us why, like, maybe even have like a scientist, like, say, yeah, we've killed a couple of these creatures and I've examined them, and their systems that they're using to hunt or whatever is this many millions of years old based upon what I know of evolution, right? Something like that.
Their fossils are similar to this dinosaur that we found existed at this time.
Yes, exactly, right? So there would have been so many other ways to, more effective ways to get that point across.
I did like, though, just to be the devil's advocate here, I did like the fact that they tried to explain where these creatures came from, where in some other movies, like The Quiet Place, for example, and we won't talk too much about it, but just the creatures were just kind of there.
Well, they had news clippings on the walls that you're supposed to read that kind of gives you an idea of it, right?
Fair enough, yeah.
Right, and that's fine. And I didn't mind that too much. I actually found that better. Like, if they just said, it's an unearthed cave system or whatever, right? But they tried to give too much detail.
Oh, they tried to explain it too much. Fair enough. Okay.
Right? It would have been like, we don't know where these came from.
We don't know a lot about them, but stay inside, be quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Right? I think that's a better way to approach it, right? Once again, it's not me directing it or writing it or anything like that, but I think for me, that's kind of what kind of ruined it for me. It pulled me away from the story because as soon as I have questions about, like, well, how would you know that, then I'm out of the story.
Yeah,
right?
As soon as you get in your own head and you're able to think about things and be like, well, that doesn't make sense, then the movie's not doing a good job of grabbing you, right? And so that speaks to the fact that there were the slow parts in this movie where you had that chance to kind of think to yourself and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. How do these things fit? And then you're right. You're kind of suspending that disbelief at that point, right?
Yeah, like, well, you're not suspending.
You're not.
it.
Yeah. You're outside of that, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're extending your disbelief.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Or engaging it, or whatever.
The one thing I wanted to bring up, though, was some of the acting. I thought that the main little girl, Allie, was outstanding.
Yeah.
And did you recognize that actress at all?
No, I did not.
So she was the oldest daughter in the Mad Men series.
I never watched Mad Men.
Oh, okay. So that it was just, I love that series when it was on TV there for the numerous seasons. One of the greatest shows in television history, honestly. And just to see her kind of a little bit more grown up now, I'm like, oh my gosh! Like when I first was watching the movie, I'm like, I know this girl. And then when I was kind of doing my research on the film, I'm like, oh my gosh, she was from Mad Men. So I just thought that was kind of cool to see her a little bit more grown up. And I like how they kind of presented her character right off the bat there, how they kind of every so often would show the viewer how she was seeing the world, just kind of with the sounds muffled and that kind of ringing going on.
Yeah.
I thought they presented that really cool in that opening scene where she's kind of at high school there, and those teenage boys are being complete jerks to her, kind of like sneaking up behind her and like pretending that they're deaf and type of thing. And I just like,
make fun of her. Doing it knowing that she can't hear, so being clearly cowards.
And then so when I saw that scene right off the bat, I'm like, wow, this movie might be good, because that was realistic. Like, teenagers are jerks to each other, especially teenage boys. And then just to see how they presented how she saw the world, I'm like, oh, this could be pretty decent.
Yes. However, there was a deaf child in A Quiet Place.
A lot of similarities here.
Right? So like for that, I was just like, meh. Like it's the reason why I like it, and the reason why I think it's a good tool to use, that it was used effectively in A Quiet Place. It's like, okay, well, this explains how they can communicate without making noises.
How
right?
they've been able to survive so long.
Yeah, right. So because they don't need to, right? They have a deaf daughter, and they've been communicating with sign for this whole time, and so it translates into this universe very easily, right? So I like that part about it, but we just saw it, right? We just saw it, and I don't understand like why the people watching this, or the people producing it, or the people writing it, aren't they like, well, yeah, I like this in A Quiet Place, so let's just put it in this one.
And so,
I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand that.
And so that's been a big criticism of this film, that this was just a straight ripoff of The Quiet Place. And it was actually described in a couple articles that I read that they called this a mockbuster. Have you ever heard that term mockbuster before?
No, but I know what it means.
Yeah, so it's basically, for those of you who don't, it's a low budget version in order to exploit a big blockbuster that's already come out, right? And so I can see why they might say that. But then when you kind of look into this a little bit further, so The Silence, this film, was based on a novel that came out in 2015.
Okay.
And filming actually took place in 2017 at the exact same time when filming for The Quiet Place was taking place.
Yeah.
And so The Quiet Place came out last year in 2018. And so
it makes sense.
When you kind of look at this stuff, it's almost like it was like the parallel productions were coincidental, but it's like it's almost too coincidental. So one was kind of grabbing from the other. I'm not sure which way it was, but
I don't know about that. If they're both filming at the same time and but running off of different scripts, and
but this is based on a book. It came out in 2015.
Yes. So what's coincidental then? The Quiet Place or the other one?
Exactly. What came first, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying, but that is an interesting premise, that's for sure.
But I can't tell you when the script for A Quiet Place was written. Maybe the script for A Quiet Place was written before 2015.
Yeah, who knows?
Right? So it's just like, but I would say, based on what I've just said, it's not a complete ripoff of A Quiet Place, right? Because this book was written before A Quiet Place came out.
No, that's fine. That's not. But like in terms of film years, it is a ripoff.
In terms of what, sorry?
In terms of film years, right? So Quiet Place came out first, so
one that they beat them to the punch.
That's exactly what it was.
And so most people won't even look into that stuff that I found.
Well,
They'll just see this movie and be like, "Oh, this is just a ripoff."
Well, why would you? Like, you're looking into the background of it because we're doing a podcast on it, right?
Yeah.
And you're good at that stuff, and it's interesting. I like to hear about it, right? I didn't like this movie. I wouldn't look into the background of it.
No, fair enough. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you might check it out because you're like, oh, I like The Quiet Place. Let's see what these people do, and then you're not enjoying it. You're like, this is a ripoff. This is what was that term again? A mockbuster, right?
A mockbuster, yeah. So I wouldn't look into the background of it all. But here I want to ask you, there's subtitles in this. Were you okay with that, Kyle? Were you okay with that?
I made it through with the subtitles. It wasn't the entire movie, which is when I have issues. It was just in certain parts that I actually found it like helped with the tension, because it was like there was a lot of like interesting stuff going on when the subtitles happened, right? Because usually they were forced to be quiet.
Yeah. Do you know? I was gonna ask you. Did you ever watch that show Northern Exposure?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so the uncle friend or whatever, he was from Northern Exposure. He was the DJ on that. So when I saw him too, I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. I like this guy. He's
another recognizable actor.
Yeah. So there's a lot of times you'll look at a product and you'll want to be interested in it because of the people that are in it, right? So I like Stanley Tucci. I like I think his name's John Corbett. They're both good actors. So when I saw them both, I was like, cool. These guys are in it, so this has some promise here, right? So I'm not going to say like. So what am I mostly critical about? I'm not critical about the acting. The acting was good. right?
I agree with you on that.
I'm not critical about the special effects. They're fine.
What? So I agree with you on the special effects for 95% of the movie. The one issue I had was a scene that I liked and then didn't like. So remember when they came across the farmhouse, I want to call it, where they ended up finding refuge.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it wasn't the refuge, but it was,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, in the country. Anyways, at the one point, they're kind of crawling through that tunnel to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they come across the cobra or the rattlesnake. It was a rattlesnake. It wasn't a cobra. And when I first saw that, I do not like snakes. And so I'm like sweating.
Like Indiana Jones.
It's my worst nightmare. You're in a confined space and there's a rattlesnake right there.
Yeah.
Like it made me like ill. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. But then when the vesp comes in there and kind of like bites the rattlesnake or whatever, I'm like, this looks so computer generated, not real.
Yeah.
So that was my one issue with the special effects. But other than that, I thought the special effects were good. It's like an impossible scene to film because everything was so close up and everything, right?
Yeah, they might have been better served going practical on it.
Exactly, right?
But who knows?
So that was my one issue with the special effects. But other than that, I thought that the special effects did a great job, and they brought for a lot of cool scenes. Again, back to that same time frame in the movie when they're kind of first coming across that country house, and it's the old lady's house.
Mm-hmm.
And she makes too much noise, and then all those vesps kind of like
They,
attack
like,
her and like drag her into the well. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was ruthless.
They ruin her.
So I thought
bad.
that was kind of cool too.
Yeah. So fair enough. Like there were some pretty interesting scenes, right? Like that can't be dismissed. But overall, like the overall film, I didn't enjoy it. When the preacher, tongueless preacher guy showed up, I was like, really?
Really? I thought that I didn't see that type of thing coming. I thought
Dude,
that this was
cults in every post-apocalyptic film.
But I thought
everyone. If they didn't have one, I would have been like, cool.
I thought that this one was too, like, what's the right word? Too recent. Like it just happened.
Okay.
Usually you see those cults in like the post-apocalyptic ones where they've been living in the post-apocalyptic world for months. In this case, it had only been like a few days.
Well, usually you see that because this is it was presented in a different format. But I would argue that these cults spring up right away because this is the end of the world that they've been talking about forever.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So you know what I mean. So then they become powerful then, and they could see this is our time to shine, right?
I didn't see it coming that they were going to come and attack the house. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know how this movie was going to wrap up. Obviously, as you're watching the movie, you know the length of it, and I could see that like there wasn't that much screen time left, and I'm like, how are they going to finish this thing?
Yeah.
And so I didn't see that happening in the third act there, that cult and the Reverend and his followers were going to show up and kind of try and abduct Allie. Like, I thought that was interesting, and honestly, I loved the kind of like child suicide bomber cell phone thing. I thought that was really cool. You know what I'm talking about? Where they sent the little girl in and she had like all the cell phones strapped to her like a suicide bomber would, and had them go off so the vesps would attack the cottage. I thought that was pretty original, pretty cool. I didn't see that coming at all. There's no way you can tell me you predicted that.
Well, there's nothing you can't predict it, but you know based upon the movie that they're going to use sound.
I guess, like, and I thought
I guess, like, they're going to use sound, right?
And I thought that when the little girl was there, that she was part of the cult. The cult was kind of like planting her there so that they would open the door. Mm-hmm. And I thought they would rush at that point.
Yeah.
But then when they didn't rush, I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's the end game here, right? And I just thought that was pretty creative. No?
Yeah. So I'm not going to say there's stuff that wasn't creative, right? I was really turned off by the cult. I'm tired of the cults. I'm tired of them.
Okay.
They're almost in every post-apocalyptic film. They're just everywhere. It's like a normal trope. It's a normal thing that they throw out there all the time, and I'm just like, I'm tired of it. And then like, why was this guy's tongue cut out?
Because they're living in a world where you can't make noise anymore. I guess.
Good one, right? Like, come on, come on.
I love your reaction. That's amazing.
Well, to me, it's like, that seems so. Like I'd look at that in a comic book. Like I wouldn't look that in an actual movie, right?
Yeah, no, I
That's
hear
like
you.
a comic book thing to me. It's like when you ever look at the Walking Dead comics.
Yeah.
So it has stuff like that in it, right? And I could see that being in there, and that's fine with it being in there. But it's to me, it's like a little, it's like so. It's just so I don't even know really the proper word for it. It's just too much of it, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, we live in a world of silence. These animals, prehistoric animals, come out and start murdering everyone. This cult springs up. Yeah, cool, because the cults always spring up. And if you're, I'm going to show you how dedicated I am in being a cult person by opening my mouth and showing you I cut out my own tongue. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, I don't even care.
And I think that with the cult as well as that we're just talking about, it led to a couple of the dumb decisions in this movie. Like
cult, I was going to ask you about that. But go on.
So John, I want you to put yourself, you and your family have found refuge in this house. A cult leader and his followers show up. They tell you that they want your daughter because what does he say again? She's fertile or something like that?
Yeah, something to repopulate the world.
Are you really sticking around in that house as soon as those cult members leave? Me? I'm getting my family and we are leaving ASAP. I don't care if we don't have any other shelter. It's time to go.
Yeah, I don't see. They were doing fine without shelter before, so I didn't really see that. I didn't see the point sticking around. It's like, why are you making your last stand here?
There's 0 point sticking around. You got to go.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was a stupid decision was when her mom needed those antibiotics,
mm-hmm.
and they're Allie and her dad are leaving the compound, kind of, and they're at the gate. It has those bells, and they have to kind of like open the gate slowly to not ring the bells too much. And Allie is just kind of standing right beside her dad as they're opening the gate.
Yeah.
That is so unbelievably stupid to have both of them in harm's way there. Just be like, hey, Allie, go stand 20 feet over in that direction just in case the bells cause the vesps to come.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, hey, Allie, stand right beside me so that we both can die if the bells
we both
ring.
get eaten.
So I like just small things like that, right? Was there another stupid decision that you thought of, or did I go through it already?
No, I had one, and I don't. That's what I was going to ask you about it. I don't know if it's like an actually stupid decision. Or what was going on. So it's like, remember they're in the van after the guy's truck goes off the road.
The uncle.
Yeah, the uncle's truck goes off the road, and so they're all sitting in the van, and then Allie sees the hair on the dog go up or whatever, and she tells everyone to be quiet. Like the car started, they're ready to go. And then she tells them, everyone to shut it down and turn it off. Like, why didn't they just drive away?
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Why'd they stay there and wait for all these things to attack them? And then secondly...
Did they think maybe that turning the car on...
It was already on.
Yeah. Did they turn the car off? I can't remember.
They did.
I know the scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
But maybe like the sound of the engine they were worried about?
That's what they were worried about. But it's on. Drive away. You can drive faster than them.
You think?
Of course. And secondly...
Those things were flying pretty fast, man.
Come on, man. Anyway, okay, so say that's not true. And that's why I'm saying I want to ask you about this dumb decision. But when the truck of the uncle blew up...
Yeah.
They couldn't have driven away under cover of that noise?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah.
Right? They could have driven away, is all I'm saying. It's what I think, right? So I think the dumb decision would have been, like, why you sticking around? Like, why are you hanging out there?
Yeah, and I think with that one, like, those are, like, the instantaneous, like dumb decision. Like, it'd be like, oh, did I make the right call or not? Where, like, the other ones were almost, like, a little bit, you have time to think about them, right? They had time to think, hey, this cult leader and his followers just showed up. What should we do? Oh, let's chill. Maybe they won't come back now, right? Like, or like, oh, we got to ring this bell. We have to slowly, but let's stand together as we're ringing this bell,
or at least have a plan, right? So
exactly.
Here's what would have been a simple fix, right? So the cult members, where'd they show up? They show up through the gate, right? They came through the front door there.
Yeah.
When they show up there, you have a string tied to that bell.
Yeah, let's
ring the bell.
Let's try and secure our surroundings a little bit here, right?
Right. So like, there's some things that if you had to stay there for whatever reason, you thought you were compelled to stay there, the wife's injury, whatever the case may be, you felt you need to stay there. Yeah, take some measures.
No, fair
right?
enough. John, I'm upset though that you didn't love that suicide cell phone bomber as much as I did. Like, I just thought that was so hilarious when it was happening. Like, it brought a smile to my face, and they're like trying to dunk these cell phones in water, and the Vesper like going in through the windows. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a cool scene. Just didn't do it for you. I guess you were just out of the movie at that point.
I was out of the movie. Yeah, I was out of the movie. I tried not to be. Okay, well, there's the actors I like are in it, and it's an interesting premise at least, right? So I should try to get myself back into it, but I couldn't do it. There's too much wrong. I felt like I was watching an anime or an animated film instead of an actual movie, because there's no real, I didn't feel any pull to it. Like none. I didn't get pulled into it at all.
No, and that's fair enough. And to be completely honest, the critics agree with you. Right now on Rotten Tomatoes, it's sitting at 26.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very, very low. With
That's
only
very low,
26% of critics enjoying it.
What's the audience score? Does it have it on there?
They don't have any audience score.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't find anything about the budget. No box office. It didn't go into theaters. It went straight to Netflix, and that's where both you and I watched it. And so when I was younger, when a movie didn't go into theaters, you knew it was like a serious B, C movie. Like it was not going to be a good movie at all.
Yeah, straight to VHS, it used to be called.
Now, though, things have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So I recently watched 2 movies on Netflix that I thought were both very good, and they were straight to Netflix movie. One was with Ben Affleck, The Last Frontier, very good.
Which one is that? The one where
they're kind of like former Navy SEALs or special ops or something like that.
I thought that movie was crap.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Go on.
You didn't like it at all?
No,
but
no.
I just thought that it was like, it didn't seem like a straight to,
no, it did not.
to
No,
video
for
type
sure.
thing. It had a lot of money and a big budget.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say that times are changing
Oscar
now.
Isaac was in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is whether you liked it or disliked that movie is just that things are different. That when something goes straight to Netflix,
It doesn't
it's
mean
not like
anything.
it used to be where
Yeah.
it was straight to VHS. So I thought maybe, oh well, even though this is straight to Netflix, it might be an okay film. But yeah, I'm higher than that. I'm at probably the low 40s. I might be where Mark Walker is, the fella who recommended that we check this out, where he said it's half decent and it's probably better than the reviews are, but it's just so low because of the similarities to The Quiet Place. I really agree with that. So I put it in the 40s, so I'm still giving it a thumbs down.
Okay, so
but the 40s is a half decent thing.
Okay, here's a question for you then. If there was no Quiet Place, what would you score this?
You know what? I don't know if I'd be much higher than the 40s. Maybe I'd be in the 50s or low 60s. And I can't tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if The Quiet Place I'd never seen it, I'd never existed, just the fact, the whole hunting by sound, you have to be quiet thing, since I would have never seen that before, maybe I would have been a lot more interested in what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's how I would get that 10 or 20 point bump. But having seen The Quiet Place with all the issues that we talked about, I'm sitting in the low 40s.
Okay.
Where are you? Are you around 26 with the critics here, or are you a little bit higher, or even lower?
I'm like a 10%, man.
Oh my gosh. So this is like one of the worst horror movies you've ever seen.
I wanted to turn it off like a few times. I wanted to turn it off. So it's and I wouldn't say it's like the worst horror movie or anything like that. I just mean like, so what am I judging it on? I'm judging it on I didn't want to watch it. So if I didn't want to watch it, that's a bad rating. Right? So
and you wouldn't recommend this to someone, obviously?
No, never.
No. Fair enough, right?
Right? So I don't think it has anything to do with The Quiet Place, actually. I was like, I watched Quiet Place, and then, and then you have this film, and I didn't care that, you'd have to be quiet or do anything like that. Like I said before, I don't care what monsters are or how you found them or whatever, as long as it's well presented, as long as everything's cohesive, as long as the writing was well done, as long as the movie was really good, pretty much, right? So it made you forget how stupid it is that there's monsters hunting you, right? So for that purposes, I was just like, for this film, at no point was I that's not true. So I would say the very beginning I was interested. I like to see how disasters start. You never really see that. You just mentioned that before. Usually you get jumped in later on, right?
Yeah, months down the road or years down the road.
They kind of sometimes they'll show a small snippet of how things started, and then
like a
boom.
flashback almost.
And then right. So I enjoyed that they thought to do that. That you're going to be going along the journey as the apocalyptic event is occurring, right? That you're there with it as it's happening. I thought that was a good idea, but the execution was poor, right? So for me, it's not the worst horror movie I've ever seen,
but it's there for you.
It's just only in terms of watchability, right?
Yeah.
So like some other horror movies that are terrible, they're terrible for all sorts of reasons.
And I think it's a good indicator that both of us turn this off.
Yeah.
Movies are not put together to watch in pieces. This is not a television series. Like,
No.
You're supposed to sit down and watch this story for 2 hours.
Yeah. And then not realize that 2 hours have passed when it's over.
Yeah, I'd be look at your
Right.
watch and be like, oh my gosh, that went by quick.
Yeah. Right? So,
No, fair enough. Well, anything else to add?
nope.
Well, please check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at Dan Movies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first 2 novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers, and his new novella, Balance, is also available on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
That's right. Thanks, everyone, and have a great week. Oh, yeah, and be kind to everyone.